Mama Knows Not a podcast. We're going to talk about the spectrum of fatherhood today with Jimmy. I know him from high school. He happened to answer a post that I put up, and I'm so stoked that he did because I think he's going to bring a lot of value for dads, moms, and just parents in general with what it's like to be a parent. So Jimmy, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us. I think this is awesome. I can't wait to hear your story. And so let's just get right into it. Tell us a little bit about your dad life. How did you feel when you first found out your wife was pregnant and you were going to be a dad?
Yeah, so I mean, probably everybody would say surprise, right? But I remember exactly that moment. I'm like already getting choked up, thinking about that. Like that moment.
That's so sweet.
I was standing at the top of my steps. I think I walked up there and, I was down in the kitchen. She was like calling me up, screaming my name from the top of the steps. So I go run up the steps and she's holding like the pregnancy test and you just see like two lines and it's like, something we wanted, but it wasn't necessarily like something that was like planned. Like our second pregnancy was like very planned and took a lot of effort, where this one was like much more effortless. So it was like it was a surprise, like the best surprise you could ever have. And just like really like shock, disbelief,
that's awesome.
Like emotions. Like I think both of us just wanted to tell our immediate family. I think we first told her mom, then we called my mom, and then my sister. So just excitement for sure. I mean, obviously a lot of the same emotions that everybody has.
We were like flabbergasted. I wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. I talk about that a lot in the podcast. So, and then my husband was like, "What? Excuse me?" I'm like, looks like we're taking a left instead of a right, babe. Here we go.
Yeah, it's a nice little detour. Congrats. I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, life happens, right? And there's always things that come up. You're like, oh, shoulda, coulda, woulda, or not. It's impossible. What does that even mean sometimes? We feel really fortunate.
Yeah, I hear that time and time again, but it is like an absolute miracle and things just kind of happen on their own terms.
Exactly. It's like, I couldn't be on birth control for 10 years. And then all of a sudden in my early 30s, I'm pregnant. Like, really? Okay. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
I always like to ask dads this question. What was it like to watch your wife become a mom?
So, that's actually like a hard question to put into words. I think that my favorite thing in the world is just watching her interact with my son. And now I have a daughter too. So interacting with my kids. But like, I just remember a couple weeks back, this new park in the area, it's like a nature park. It's all just built around nature with like logs to climb on. Nice. There's like a path through wildflowers down to a creek that pours into the Susquehanna. And she's just like walking through the creek with my son, and he's like experiencing something for the first time that, like resonates with my childhood of like exploring in the woods and walking through the creeks and doing all that. And like seeing my wife with him, like experiencing that. And just, that's like just one instance that I can immediately like think of as just like the best thing, just like watching my wife's love like pour into my kids, and she is like really just absolutely amazing. She is an amazing mother.
You're gonna make me cry. Oh my god! I don't have tissues handy. Okay, stop. That's so sweet.
Now, one thing too is she, with both pregnancies, she suffered from postpartum depression. And that's something I never told you. So that's something like very real. And as a husband, seeing your wife go through something that you can't control and that you can't solve is tough, because like as the husband, like I'm always like feel like I need to be the problem solver. And when she has a problem, even though she's not like soliciting advice half the time, I'm always like trying to solve that problem. So to like see her go through the emotional struggles of the postpartum, which really does affect like 1 in every 5 women. It's like 20% of women go through like real postpartum depression. That was really tough. And, I just feel like there's not like enough support for women when it comes to the postpartum. They just like in her instance had a C-section. So they just like literally like cut a baby out of you, send you home in 3 days, like try not to pick up your baby, by the way. Like, you can pick up the baby, but you can't pick up the car seat, like, because like she had a C-section, and just you know, but you don't have time to take care of yourself. You got to take care of this kid. And it's just like, it was like really tough. Like, seeing her go through that
Yeah.
was really hard.
I'm a big proponent of if mom's not okay, no one's okay. Like, honestly, especially like in postpartum. And I think it's so hard because those, questionnaires they give you, 6 weeks after, like the one time you go to your doctor, it's like, we all know how to lie on those. Come on. And all of us don't want to feel crazy or like we can't. And I think in a way that's like a cultural thing too. Like, we feel like we can't ask for help.
Oh, absolutely. Like, the stigma is real.
Yeah. And then as women, like, what's paternity time? Like, let's not even talk about maternity. Like, what's paternity time? Like, in so many other cultures, like, dads have time off too, even if it's just a couple weeks, like, just to get acclimated. And then here you are as a woman in the States, and one of the most industrialized, like, sophisticated cultures, and you're back to work 6 weeks later, and your hormones haven't readjusted, and you're still trying to figure out how to, like, care for this child and yourself. And your body is just in this like weird flux, and we expect women to be like ready to jump back into everything.
Yeah, like, let me go to work in diapers, because that's kind of where you're at,
right.
Like, 6 weeks later. And this first 6 weeks as a parent, like the first 6 weeks, whether it's your first kid or your fifth, like that's hell week. Like, those are the hardest times. And I tell people when they have their first kid, like, when they're like, does it get easier? Does it get easier? Like, get to 6 weeks. And once you get to 6 weeks, like that 3-month mark, things get way easier at that 3-month mark. But that 6 week really, like, they're probably not waking up 7 to 8 times a night. They're probably waking up 4 or 5 times a night. And like, it makes a huge difference. And they're just
huge difference.
More of like aware of being in the world. They can do a little bit more besides like just lay there and be completely helpless. Not that they can do a whole lot, but yeah, I mean, just like throw a woman back into work after like 6 weeks of having either a natural birth or a C-section. Your body went through so much. Your hormones, like you said, just haven't balanced. It's really, I mean, like you said, like for America, like if that's like the norm, it's just kind of odd. And like with fatherhood, I'm juggling my PTO, just trying to, take care of my wife, take care of my kids, adjust as like being a dad for the first time, and like learning what that's all about. So yeah, it was, the beginning was definitely tough.
Well, I also think about like postpartum that we don't emphasize is it can happen anytime in that like first year and a half. It doesn't have to be immediately after. It could be 6 to 12 months, even 18 months after that it like hits you, like, because we're all on different timelines for healing, like every woman's journey, every person's journey with everything. It's like there's a bell curve, right? But even in the bell curve, there's
you have your outliers,
differentiation,
but
right?
also like
so you have your outliers, but like how do you but even in that like that top of the curve, there's differences, so like I felt fine 6 weeks later, but I know women who a year later didn't feel good. So and people who didn't have any symptoms. Like one of my best friends, like we had our daughter, our kid, not our daughters, our kids at the same time. She has a daughter, I have a son, and she had like postpartum, and I couldn't even tell. And I saw her every day. And you're like, what? Like, so those kinds of things too. So I think it's just a good thing that you brought that up as from the spousal perspective of how tough it is to watch and how tough it is, like it can be to identify.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you have to check in on your spouse. And like, I did the best I could, but it seems like, and maybe I'm guilty of it too, but like when she's like talking to her family and talking to friends, it's always, how's the baby? How's Jim? No one's like, how are you? And I know that was just like really hard. And then like you said, how like it can affect you like 6 months down the road, a year down the road. Not only are you dealing with something that could be postpartum depression just from like a hormone imbalance or change of life, but the just a struggle with like your identity, because it's like now you're a mom. I know with my wife being self-employed, she struggled with that tremendously because she worked so hard. She still continues to work so hard, and now she's juggling her professional life with her wife life and with her parent life and with her like social life, and it's just like kids
Mm-hmm.
come first, and really from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. we're like nonstop just being freaking parents, and
Right.
it's tough. So when I'm like, I work from home, when I'm done my job, like I can check out. Like no one's really bothering me all that much
Right.
because I work for a company. With her, like she tries to do some work while the kids are napping or while they're eating, stuff
Totally.
like that. But like she's just as tired as me. And now she has to like, go do work. Otherwise it's not going to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that struggle right there of like um, just like the identity change, becoming a mom, like I saw that and I still continue to, and she still kind of can struggle with that.
Your son just turned 3. We were talking about it before we recorded. Mine turned 4 in April, and I still struggle with that. Like somebody said something to me that finally resonated, and it was like, "It's not your time to shine." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's so true." And a year ago, that would have angered me because I'm like, "Why not?" I'm not just a mom. Like I'm so capable, and you feel, and again, I think this is a cultural thing. Like it's so hard for me, I'll just speak for myself, to enjoy some of the little moments because I'm thinking about all the other things I could do. So tonight, before we got on this call, like we were playing Yahtzee with Declan and Sorry, like playing like games with him, and we haven't done that in a really long time. But it's like something stupid and little that's just like a bonding thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas before I would have tried to like put on music, he loves to dance, and then like do the dishes. And I was like, let's play a game instead. And my husband's 12 years older than me. So he's the breadwinner. He's the financial provider. And sometimes it's really hard for me. I mean, until we got together, I was independent. No one paid my bills. No one took care of me. So accepting that and
Right,
then
yeah.
having to identify, I'm assuming your wife sounds kind of similar in a way. Like she's got her thing. She wants to do it. And it's so hard to be a mom and wanting to do your thing and also wanting to be present for your child. Because wherever I am, I think about the other thing because I'm working. I'm like, I should be with my kid. I should be putting him down. Oh, I'm putting my kid down. I should be writing something. I should be outlining something. I should be trying to find an interview. I should. And it's like, but you know what? In this moment, the reason it's not exploding is it's not my time. And that's okay. I'm still going to do what I love and I'm going to make time for it. But it's so hard to let that professionalism go.
Yeah.
It's so hard. So I feel for, basically what I'm trying to say is I feel for her. Like I totally know what she's going through.
Yeah, I do
100%.
too. And I think I've like put off like my bigger plans. Like I've kind of been saying for a while, like maybe it's not my time, but like everything she's doing, like she's setting us up. So like soon it will be, and so like it really is like a struggle with her, but she works harder than anybody I know. Like I think it was over the past 6 months, she just wrote a 96,000 word novel.
Nice.
Series 1 of 3,
Wow.
so like she did that
Wow.
while being like a full-time stay-at-home mom, while running 2 e-commerce sites, while doing some freelance work at the same time. That she tried to pass up like 5 times, but they literally dragged her kicking and screaming, sign on the dotted line. And so she like
I need
her.
I need her. How does she stay organized? I need her.
I don't know.
tips.
It's not through a list, I'll tell you that, but it's like all in the head, all in her head.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, she's very driven.
Wow, I love that. That's actually, now I'm gonna come to visit you guys.
She'd be a more interesting person to talk to be honest, than me. You're stuck with me.
If she wants to talk, she can too. I always like the dual perspective.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your kids. So you have the 3-year-old Henry, right?
Yeah, so
and
Henry.
then the baby, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so his name's Hendrik, but we call him Henry.
I like I love that. Hendrik, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. His grandfather's name's Roderick, and we like the name Henry, so we named him Hendrik. We spelled a little differently than Hendrik too, so he's probably like the only one with that name. It's how we spell it, but it's kind of like Roderick and it's Hendrik. So, but we call him Henry. Like we never call him Hendrik. And same with my daughter. So she's 10 months. She'll be 10 months in a couple of days, like 2 days, and tomorrow. And she's Charlotte, but we call her Charlie. And like she's never been really Charlotte. Like it's always just like Charlie. Um, when she
So
was like a
cute.
real nut when she was younger, like we call her Chucky, but not after like the crazy doll, you know what I mean? But it's just like
That's
Chucky.
what I went.
Yeah, everybody does
So I
too. I
went.
don't know. It's just like a nickname that stuck. But she's,
So
little
cute.
Charlie Rose. This is my daughter. She's 10 months. So Henry's like neurodiverse. He's on the autism spectrum, and we can get a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more into that. My daughter Charlie, she's 10 months, so like we don't know um,
Mm-hmm.
when like really autism doesn't really like develop or start showing signs. Why it's there at birth, but you don't start seeing
Mm-hmm.
signs of it till like 6 to 12 months. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so like if you ask me, being she's like 10 months now, like if you asked me 3 or 4 months ago, like do you think she's on the spectrum? I'd be like, no, she's like neurotypical as can be. She is
Mm-hmm.
um, way different than Henry. She has stranger danger for one. Like that's something he didn't have as a kid. You could pass him on. I could pass him on to
Mm.
you. I could pass him on to you right now, and he would hang out with you for a month, and then like I'll come back, and he'd probably at this point I
Wow.
think he'd probably say daddy, but it wouldn't be this run to me and everything else like that. With Charlie,
Oh,
like when she
interesting.
hears my voice, like if I come downstairs when I'm getting off work, I work from home most of the time.
Oh,
Like she hears my voice and she starts squeaking and flapping and like she's like really happy to see me. So like a lot of differences there.
so
Um,
sweet.
but yeah, with like the stranger danger, but then, and I still don't know. Like even when with Henry, like when we first, and like I'll go into a little bit more detail about like his like diagnosis process and everything like that. But like you go
Mm-hmm.
through once kind of people put it in your head that there might be something like different, then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, maybe, I kind of see it. Like maybe I'm like 50-50. And then I'm like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
nah, 90% he's neurotypical or 10% he's autistic. Then you're
Yeah.
90% he's autistic, 10% neuro like typical. And we're kind of like going that through that with like my daughter now, actually like more last month than right now, because I feel like she's kind of opened up a lot over the past week or two. But like
Mm-hmm.
we've been seeing some similarities with her, um, with all the differences, but you see some similarities, like her eye contact
Mm-hmm.
isn't 100% there. Like especially when you hold her, she'll like look past you in any direction. She won't look you in the eye, and like that's something Henry struggles with a lot. But like when I walk into a room, she'll be staring at me. For a while, she was like just fascinated with anything that spun. And so I'd like walk into her room, would turn her fan off. She had a little box fan on there. Um, Obviously it's a good idea to keep a like moving air in your kids'
Right.
room because of SIDS and everything. So both kids still to this day they sleep with fans, and like she would just be like glued on that spinning box fan. She would not take her eyes off of
Mm-hmm.
it. And then like you get her out of the crib, she'd want to like go over to it, but that also can just be like a very like neurotypical thing too. Like some kids can just be
Yeah.
fascinated. Like I even brought it up with her pediatrician at her 9 month appointment last month, and she was like, "My kids were her neurotypical. They were at church fascinated with the ceiling fan." So
Yeah.
it's just like,
Declan was too. Yeah,
yeah. So
totally.
it can
But
be
it's
normal.
hard to like gauge, you know what I mean? Like it's hard, and once you have one child who has a diagnosis, like it's hard. You don't want to like project, but it's also hard to like you want to catch the warning signs. You don't want to miss them,
No,
you know?
absolutely.
Like that's that's how I would be like
Plus, we don't
like
know.
what's normal, what's not normal, like how, you know what I mean?
We just don't even
Anyway.
know what like normal 10-month-old looks like because I've never had one. You know what I mean? So like, there's that struggle.
Mhm.
And I'm by no means like an expert at autism. I've been like thrown into it, and it affects my everyday for the
Mhm.
past year and a half because now he just turned 3.
Mhm.
So, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit that about like what we saw with
Sure.
Henry and like how we
Yeah,
came to
yeah, yeah.
find
Go.
out he was on the autism spectrum? So,
Totally. Yeah, yeah. Dive right in.
I guess every pediatrician's different, but the one we went to at the
Mm.
time, they would always give us the same survey, and we just thought it was like gauging milestones. We didn't think it was anything
Right.
other than that. But it would ask certain questions like, does your kid respond to his name? Is he pointing to
Yeah.
things? Is he looking to where you're pointing? Um, Dozens of other things. But we took that
Hmm.
survey like every single time. And you know how many times you're in the pediatric office, like over the first year and a half, it's often.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and we were like at a good doctors. Well, we thought it was good. It was like in
Mm-hmm.
a decent part of town. It's like all my sister's kids
Mm-hmm.
went there, but like I feel like we never had like a consistent doctor. You always like see someone different. It was kind of
Right.
frustrating. And then
Yeah.
finally we like saw this one lady and everything was fine during the 1.5 year appointment. But I got home, I was working. She called me. She's like, "Oh, I forgot to mention, like, we noticed on the blah 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 survey that you took, like your son shows markers for early autism." So that was like the first
Hmm.
time we ever suspected that because we're like, my kid can count to 20. He knows every single letter. He identifies shapes, but it's like you're right. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know mommy. He doesn't know daddy. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't point to things. He doesn't look when you
Right.
point. You hold him. If I grab him like, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
how are you doing?" Like he'll be like, like looking everywhere. He'll be looking through you. It's like so hard to
Right.
get his attention. So you're like, wow, like
Mm-hmm.
so that's what like a child on the autism spectrum could look like. Like this is one version of someone who's autistic. So that
Totally.
was at 1.5 years.
Wow.
Once we,
He knew his numbers and letters at a year and a half?
oh yeah, he's like, and mainly through music because he loved he loves still to this day, like music videos, super simple songs. And like, yeah, he knows his alphabet. And that's the weird thing because like even to this day, he can't say more than 1 to 3 words when he's
Mm-hmm.
expressing a want or a need or trying to communicate. But he
Right.
can sing the entire Twinkle Twinkle Little Star from memory. Um, a YouTube commercial comes on that I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 times. He hums the entire jingle, and that's pretty wild.
Interesting.
And
That's incredible.
yeah, it is incredible. And like, but that's also to say, like, while that's a lot of people's like perception of autism is like superpowers, and like I hear it all the time. Like, and people mean well when
Mm-hmm.
they say this. He's going to be an
Right.
engineer. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. And you're just like, well, like he will be whatever he wants to be, and I could see him possibly being
Exactly.
those things. But he also could just really have many daily struggles, which most people
Right.
on the autism spectrum do. They have daily
Yeah.
struggles. It isn't like, not everybody's Elon Musk.
Right. Even if you do excel at something, like a lot of times it takes so much effort to get there.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
just it
I mean, that's what we see right now. And that's like with autism, it's like normal behaviors that come just natural to your son are
mm-hmm.
things that have to be taught and instilled in our son. Not that we have to
Mm-hmm.
teach him to conform to some definition of normalcy, but I'm just talking about like communicating like his wants and
Mm-hmm.
needs, like pointing to things. He will point to
Mm-hmm.
everything now. He will point to things to get my attention. That took
Mm-hmm.
up until that took a good 12 months to like master that skill.
Right.
Those papa books are like books with like
Yeah.
the little pop dots that make the noises.
Yeah.
Like I said, he loves to count, so we got the farm version. We had a bunch of them because he would like destroy them and all, but like the farm one, it would be like 5 pigs. So we're like, how many pigs? And he would count: one, push the thing, two, three, four, five. Like
Right.
just doing that all the time. And then obviously interacting with him, trying to get him to interact back with us, like that really helped. Like
Mm-hmm.
he like unlocked that behavior, and it took so much effort. But as a parent, like even to this day, when he's like pointing at something, um, like I was like, "Hey, what's that?" It was a possum. He has a stuffed possum, and he's like, "Gerbil," and then he grabs it and holds it up. He's like, "Gerbil," and I'm just like, I have it on video. I'm gonna send it to you. It's just like so funny, but
Totally.
I'm just like so proud of him for that. Like to identify that as a gerbil and to like point to it and to understand I'm asking a question. Like
Yeah.
those are the joys of fatherhood on the spectrum, like for sure. Like while we definitely struggle with not being able to experience like certain things that a lot of our friends experience, whether it's like imaginative play, having like freaking building like
Yeah.
forts or having tea time, whatever it is, like we get like the biggest sense of joy and pride from just these like tiny little accomplishments. Like today he was having kind of a meltdown. Like one of his sensory issues is sound, which his relationship with
Mm.
his sister, it's kind of like, oil and water.
I get that.
And it can be, and like, even if it's, especially when she was crying, like it was really bad. And so like,
it's not funny, but it is, you know, like I can totally understand. I can totally see, because I know a lot of people in the spectrum. I told you that I do volunteer work, so like I get it, but it's not funny, but it's like, I could see where that would be.
No, I get it.
Conundrum.
Like he would, if you put her, if he was holding her as like a baby, he tried tossing her before, like, you know, we wouldn't let her, but he'd just be like, done. You know what I mean? All done. Just like tossing.
Fair.
But
I mean, that's a natural response.
Yeah. So it's like certain pitches definitely bother him, like accordion noises, carnival noises, like those kind of like louder tones, which are very similar to like a kid crying. Her happy noises and her like babbles and stuff will set him off. So like today it was kind of setting him off because he was tired. It was right after lunch. So they're all like coming up the steps.
Right.
Because they both go to bed at 1 o'clock, take a nap, and like I hear him starting to get upset. So I go out in the hallway and I grab him. And I've my office right in here. It's also our guest room. So I've got a queen size bed right on the other side of my desk. And I like toss him on the bed into the pillows and I tickle him because he's like a sensory seeker. Like he loves sensory input.
Interesting.
And he loves to be tickled. So immediately his demeanor just like completely changed. And he's, you know, more tickle, again. He's fine. He's ready to go to bed. I hand him off to my wife. She got the baby in the crib. So I hand him off to Shelby. She puts him down. And this is like the first time this happened was today. It was like literally today. He goes to her, I see daddy, and points to the door. And that meant like he wants to go see me. You know, he's like, let's go see daddy. So she brings him in. I got to toss him on the bed and tickle him a couple times. And then he goes to bed. You know, he's like past that meltdown where you're able to like regulate. So like, just like those tiny things, like as a 3-year-old, him saying like those 3 words to us is like just huge. It's just absolutely huge.
Well, and the fact that you guys have learned how to navigate like meltdowns, because I mean, all toddlers have meltdowns, but some are definitely more aggressive or volatile or debilitating than others. Like, you know, Declan's a different story. Like I'm always like, feel your feelings, buddy. Like, that's cool. I get it. But like, if you're going to throw stuff or stomp and shout and like smack, you're going to go in your room and do it where you can be safe, you know? Because let's be real here. We all want to throw something, stomp and shout and hit something, like, but let's be productive. And he gets that. And yeah, he's a year older, sure. But like, he's neurotypical. Like, so I can rationalize with a 4-year-old way more than most people can, and that is a gift. Like,
it is good you can rationalize with that, because like it's acceptable for us to freak out over something that's like petty, you know what I mean, just be annoyed and just have no patience. So like, why is that not okay for like a 3 or 4-year-old to do the same?
Right. I think it's so important to validate the emotion. You know, I read all these things and I follow all these people, and that's one thing I can't drive home enough for like parenting in general, and something that I've learned, something that I've had to really be cognizant about is like, you have to validate what they're feeling. It doesn't mean it's logical. I mean, how logical are our feelings, even as adults? Like, they're not. Like, I get frustrated with my husband because he's not finished work on time. I get frustrated because the dog peed on the floor. I get frustrated because the cat scratched me. I get, you know, all these things, right? And I can vocalize that. Tiny people can't, generally speaking.
Yeah, and you know, I see that with, I'm sorry, continue.
No, you're fine. Totally.
Well, I see that with Henry on the spectrum, where it's because he really can't communicate his needs. He can't, if he hurts him, I can't say like what hurts. You know, he can't express like what hurts. So that adds to the meltdown, because it's like you can see the internal frustration of not being able to share his feelings on top of everything out, which is also just like the way his body just processes certain sensory inputs. And with autism, it is a whole lot of sensory. You know, it's all sensorial. It's so, everything about it has to do with a sense, whether it's see, hearing, touch, taste, like it's, you know. It's your 5 senses for sure. I mean, there's kids and just people on the spectrum, they're like, I can't be in this classroom. I smell ants. Like there's, you know, it's not uncommon for people to be able to smell ants. Like Google it. It's like a legit thing.
It's so true.
And like,
it sounds crazy, but it's true. Yeah, I get it. Totally. I think that's an interesting thing because there's such toddlerdom is a really interesting thing. Like everybody wants to generalize, like, oh, this is what you should expect, and this is how toddlers are, and blah 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 blah. And it is kind of hard to differentiate when your child is neurodiverse because they're still developing in so many ways. But there's certain milestones that need to be mastered. Like I'm sure in the next like year or two, his vocabulary will develop, but it's going to take work.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work.
And if he hasn't hit a certain milestone by like, and this is what people, I think miss sometimes is like not every kid is the same, So like my nephew, for example, he didn't talk until say his first word till he was like 2.5. And everybody was rightfully worried about him. But it was also the manner in which he was socialized. Like he just had my sister and that was it. Like nobody else, no other kids, no social interactions, all that kind of stuff. And so when he actually like started speaking, he was like full sentences. Wow. And everybody was like super surprised. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. But we forget like there's aberrations to every rule, and we want to generalize kids and what they should do, and we forget that like we're all on our own path, and toddlers, you just can't like if they're not hitting certain things most of the time, that's a problem, and so kudos to you and your wife for like jumping in there and identifying his struggles and catering to them.
That's what a lot of specialists say, for sure. They're always like, you guys are doing great. But there's an analogy that kind of hits on what you just said. And I kind of like it's corny. I didn't make it up, but it's like all the popcorn kernels are thrown into the oil at the same time, but they all pop differently. Right. So it's like you can never compare your kid with someone else's. And like everybody just, Shelby has a design in one of her stores. It's just we all bloom differently. It's a picture of a cat in a flower field.
I love that.
And I've got a shirt. Henry's got that shirt. You know what I mean? I've got similar stuff for like his sister to wear, to like advocate for that because it's so true. But like with his, because you were like kind of hitting on his vocabulary, like Henry, like I said, he can count to like, he can read numbers to 100 easily. And like, he knows all the alphabet, like phonetic alphabet. I can teach him any word within the matter of like just a minute or less.
Yeah.
His communication challenges are really receptive communication, and like there's a big difference between it being able to talk and to be able to understand what people are saying. Like that's what receptive communication is. It's like how like their ability to interpret what is being communicated to them, and like that's really what he struggles with. Like I can say at this point, like through therapy and being taught what to do in repetition, do you want pizza or do you want a sandwich? And he'll say sandwich, or he'll say pizza. Do you want cereal or do you want sandwich? Because we give him a lot of PBJ. He's a very picky eater. And he'll say cereal or he'll say sandwich, but I can't like say like, are you hungry? I can't say like, are you hungry? He won't be able to answer that. But I really do think we're going to get there. I definitely know we are. It's kind of crazy. Like this weekend, we went to an amusement park up here in PA called Knoebels. And it was for, you know about Knoebels?
Oh my God, I love Knoebels!
45 minutes away. I live like right there. I'm like 25 miles.
Oh my God. I used to camp there every summer as a kid.
It's the best. So like, and like my wife, obviously being from Central PA, like she grew up on Knoebels. So like, that's what we did for his third birthday. And we all had sandwiches. Like we packed a cooler filled with all sorts of stuff because the first thing we were going to do is like eat and then go hit the park. So we stop off at McDonald's because like he's a very picky eater. He's not going to eat frickin' hoagies. He sees McDonald's and he starts going French fry. And it's like, that was a first. And then this was Saturday. And then we pull up to the drive-thru and he says hungry. And I'm like, damn, Henry, like, that's awesome. And like Shelby was actually in the other car. We kind of like caravan down there. I'm with her dad, with Henry. She's with Charlie and her mom. Split the kids up because like I said, they can be like oil and water, especially in the car. Like And we
Oh
should we
God, I
should
can't
hit
even
on those meltdowns
imagine.
a little bit more. But like I rolled down the window, I'm like, you have no idea what he just said. He said French fry when he saw McDonald's. He just said hungry. Like this is huge, you know? And like it's just like it's
Oh
those
my
like
gosh.
micro celebrations that we like we're just like so proud of him every single day. But I want to hit on those meltdowns a little bit too. So like because you were kind of saying like every kid gets over things differently and like for sure, like that's so true. But like when
Right.
it's a sensory issue, the only real
Mm-hmm.
like solution besides exposure helps. Obviously, like he's getting better with the
Right.
exposure of just his sister, and he can tolerate if he's like well fed and he's not that tired. Like he can actually tolerate some noise in the car, even if she's crying, which 3 4 months ago he couldn't. But it really is like the only like real way to go is like to kind of separate them. And if you can't separate
Mm.
him from the stimulus, at least this is like what we see. I've never really seen anyone else have like an autistic meltdown, but with him, he'll start coughing, he'll start dry heaving. He's thrown up twice because of it. He gets that overwhelmed. His body
Wow.
gets that overwhelmed. It's almost like an anxiety attack, to be honest. And I think a lot of it,
It's visceral.
yeah, it is. And you can see
Yeah.
like my wife and I, we can see it before it happens because like we're just like I guess experienced and know what to look for. So like even with when his like
Mm-hmm.
instructors are over, like we can say like, hey, this is getting like a little too much or a little overwhelming, or he needs some tent time, he needs to go to a sensory room. um like you can kind of see it, and I feel like part of the issues he has with his sister and the sound, like he definitely has sound sensory issues, but I think part of it is like the anxiety. Like he's just knows what's about to come. Like he started about to have a meltdown, and he starts getting upset because he doesn't want to go through those feelings, and then we just feel helpless. We feel
Interesting.
like absolutely helpless, and it's hard. And then it creates as parents like anxiety when we just want to like
Mm-hmm.
everything we do is like planned around like autism, and like we gotta like really think like what's there that could overwhelm him, like what can like will we be able to like separate them if we have to, like can we, like her parents live in New Hampshire, we're
Wow.
like can we drive 7 hours, like or are we going to be an hour in? So we've got this big road trip this weekend where we're going down to Delaware to see my mom. So go to Annapolis, that's about 3 hours, kids will nap, and then we'll hit Delaware, so like another 2.5 to the beaches. So like 3 hours is going to be a long car ride for them, and it could go off without a hitch. Like I drove them both home from
Yeah.
Knoebels on Saturday, and that was like a 45-minute drive where they both skipped their naps and they were fine. They're like, well, right when we got into our neighborhood, she started making some noises. One of the ways he kind of like deals with it, he'll like, first he used to like mock her noises, but now he just kind of makes like a high pitched scream, like a real short, high pitched like scream. So he like did that once. I was like, all right, we're almost home. We got home. He was fine, got her down, got him fed, and then like everything was good. But it's just there's like sometimes like no rhyme or reason to it.
Mm. And the other thing too is like they're both developing, like he's developing his defense mechanisms. He's developing, he's growing mentally, physically, emotionally. And there is no algorithm. There's no mathematics that can tell you when he's going to be okay with anything ever. It's all going to be a crapshoot. You're just going to be like a touch and go
I
for
think
the rest of your
I think
lives.
that's what's actually really tough about being a parent of a child on the spectrum is the unknown. And maybe even I don't know if it's like a guy thing. I don't
Yeah.
want to be like sexist or anything. I'm sure my wife feels the same struggles, but she has her own struggles with it. Like mine personally, I think in the beginning it wasn't like what are like his challenges going to be. I think you kind of worry like what his like strengths are going to be in the future, because I mean as a
Mm.
parent you want your kid to have an easy life. For anyone to say differently,
Amen.
like come on. And like but you want them to be able to form independence. So like I think that's what I really struggle with. I'm like, how will this affect him in the future, and like will he
Hmm.
be able to live independently, which I think he will. And like a lot of he's been evaluated through like all sorts of different programs to be like eligible for the programs and the early interventions that he gets. And like a lot of when you read through these like 30 40 50 page like evaluations, like a lot of them say like I guess Shelby and I just kind of take it for granted, but like we are doing everything we can because we couldn't expect to do
Yeah.
anything differently or like bury our head in the sand. And like everyone says, like
Right.
the prognosis will be good through early intervention and work at home. and they say like, and we're seeing them, like all of his instructors just say like, as a team, we're doing a really good job. Like we're both on the same page. I think that's just super important for parents to be on the same page. And it probably goes just in general for anything.
So important. Oh my God, 100%. It's funny that you say that. I think this so vividly. Like parents just want their kids to have the path of least resistance. And you can't choose for your kids. Like, and there's some things that are controllable and there's other things that are uncontrollable, right? So like we can't control autism, right? We can't control a multitude of other things. I don't have the same struggle as you. I have a different struggle. And I think what it comes down to for me and probably parents in general is that relatability. So I want my son to have a beautiful life, right? Of course I do. Who doesn't? My son is obsessed with all things girl. He wants to wear girl clothes. He wants to wear girl shoes. He wants to have girl hairstyles. And I don't care. Like he's 4. So let him express himself. So he's navigating the world. He's figuring out who he is.
He's like his genuine self.
Right? Right. And every time somebody calls him a girl, I want to punch them in the face because he has a pretty face. Like he to me, he looks like a boy. But to so many other people, especially with a pigtail in, and he loves to wear my tennis shirts because I play tennis. And so he wants to put on mommy's tennis shirts. And he wants to walk around like that. And every time somebody says something, I get tense.
Of course, how could you not get tense?
I don't care if he's gay. I don't care if he's transsexual. I don't fucking care. But it is that parental instinct that I don't want anybody coming for my son. And I live in Florida and it's the South and there's a lot of judgment and people have a lot of assumptions and they think if you let your kid wear pigtails and a freaking pink shirt, like he's queer. And you're like, you know what? He might be queer and that's fucking okay. But what is not okay is for an adult to undermine a 4-year-old. That is not okay.
That was disgusting.
And I struggle with that. And it's a different struggle than yours, but it's the same goal. It's like, I get so angry and frustrated and like, because I just want him to be happy and I want him to be accepted for who he is and what he is, whatever that may be. He might be cisgender, heterosexual, like white male to the day. Like, that's great. But he might be a trans lady down the, I don't know. And that's not my journey to take. It's my journey to support him in whatever course he, pioneers. That's my job as his parent. Right. But I gotta say, it takes a lot out of me every day when I have to answer the same question 800 times and I don't understand other people. So whereas I can't understand what it's like to raise a kid on the spectrum, I can understand what it's like to have other people probably question your parenting, to have comments about your child, to make, assumptions about your child, to label your child. And you're like, he's a toddler and he's got a different set of rules and he's got a different brain than other kids. So let's just let him figure it out because to your wife's point, he'll blossom when he's going to blossom. And however that blossom turns out is going to be beautiful. So why are we talking about this now? We don't know what the future holds, but it's so easy to live in the future when you should be in the present than vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I sense the same kind of worry that I was like expressing where it's like, it seems like you're dealing with the bullshit of just like opinionated strangers and like questioning your parenting. And it's disgusting when you're doing an absolute excellent job just allowing your child to express themselves. I mean, Jesus, like that's what everybody should be doing.
Right.
But it's obviously you worry about, I'm sure your kid getting bullied in middle school and high school. And like, even if he's heterosexual, but like dressing in like feminine clothes or whatever, maybe likes putting nail polish on, like someone would call him gay and like just like the bullying. And if he is gay, like fine by me.
Yeah.
But
Right.
hopefully we'll be living in a new generation at some point where just it'll be a little more acceptable.
That's what I hope. I mean, that has yet to be seen, and there's so many factors that play into that.
No, I got you. You got a new generation of assholes for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm the mom who knows nada. My name is Brianna. That was part 1 with Jimmy, the spectrum of fatherhood. We're going to bring him back later this season for part 2, where we dive into more all about parenthood and things that surprised him and many other things. So stay tuned.